Good evening and welcome to For the Record. Fiji and the region have been under the spotlight for just over a week now, with the joint parliamentary assembly of the ACP and the EU, and even before that there were meetings and discussions being held on a regional and international level. To talk about Pacific regionalism and the way forward, we have in studio with us tonight the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum, Dame Meg Taylor. Dame Meg, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. We're also joined by our regular panelist on the show, Joshua Tuere from the Fiji Sun. We'll get right into it. Since the time that you've taken up office, you've sort of been on this campaign to reinvigorate the Pacific Island from what I can see, and to bring about reunity in the Pacific community. Is that something that you are actively working on, and is that something that you're struggling with?
Well, first of all, good evening. I haven't looked at it as a campaign. I think what I've really looked at it as a way of understanding the issues of every member state and trying to build an organisation that is committed to a broader or a deeper regionalism, where we have dialogue, and a rich dialogue about the issues that we face as a people. It has been at times of concern to me when I first arrived that Fiji wasn't fully participating, and I knew the value of Fiji's contribution over the years. That has changed in the last couple of months, and that's been a very positive step forward. I've made a big effort, because I think it's the right thing to do, is to go and visit all the member states. I now visited 13 countries, and I have 3 more before the leaders will meet in September in Papua New Guinea. And it's been a very important time for me to really learn about the issues that are so different in various countries. But for me, coming from a large country in the Pacific, was a lot of resources and a terrestrial boundary that is huge. Then visiting Kiribati and Tuvalu, I've had to really think through the challenges that people face living on these atolls, in terms of the climate issues, in terms of population and opportunities for their people. So I think it's a genuine effort to try and build and hold this Pacific family together.
We'll come back to the point of Fiji in a bit, but you spoke about regionalism. Now, there's a new plan that the Forum is working on. As we speak, the Forum, for the first time, is actually taking submissions from governments, members of the public, CSOs, anyone and everyone who's interested. The idea behind this new plan, if I may say, is the previous Pacific plan didn't quite work. Are you trying to sort of reinvigorate it?
Well, I don't know if you'll recall, but it was Sumakera Marauta, the former Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, that was asked by the leaders to review the Pacific Plan, because the Pacific Plan was actually driven by officials and not by the political leadership. And at any one time, there'd be 37 issues that would be brought to the leaders at their leaders' meeting to consider. Well, that was problematic in itself, because how are you going to have serious debate around 37 issues when you've only got a day of a closed meeting? So the framework for Pacific regionalism was to look at that, and Sumakera and his team consulted right across the Pacific with governments, civil society, academics, churches, and it was very clear that the message that people said, we do want a regional organisation, but we want to be more involved. So inclusivity is a really important aspect of the framework for Pacific regionalism. Our job is to implement it. This is the first year, so there's going to be hiccups. But we're moving slowly or steadily, and already we have something like, I understand, 35 or so submissions that have coming in from institutions, individuals, right across the region. This specialist subcommittee, which has representatives from Polynesia, Melanesia, Micronesia, civil society, private sector, Australia, New Zealand has one block, and I chair that. We'll meet again in July. They will run a series of tests of whether it really, these issues that have been raised meet a regional test, you know, because regionalism does mean that a national government has to consider, am I going to relinquish some of my sovereignty for the good of the group? And whether is there duplication in the implementation of these issues. So there's a series of tests that will be applied. All the submissions that come to us will be made public. They'll be on our website so everybody knows what those issues are. It will be for the specialist subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of the Forum Officials Committee, that will make that decision. Once they've made that decision, then the Secretariat's role is to then prepare the materials for the Forum Officials Committee before issues that have been selected go to the leaders. Now, what we hope and require of the leaders is that they will make a choice of no more than 5, and then they have to put their political will right behind these issues because they are regional issues. And then after that, they will have a conversation with the post-forum dialogue partners, and then Secretariat's role will be to then work with the crop agencies and other institutions to see how we're going to proceed with the implementation, and then how we're going to account for this back to the leaders but to the public. Now, the fundamental aspect of this is that it's going to require a much deeper and richer dialogue at the leadership level, a political commitment, and it's going to require, over time, a shift in the development paradigm, where the leaders of the region say, on regional issues, this is what we believe are the imperatives and this is what the issues are, and our development partners, if you're going to put money into regional issues, support what we want rather than defining issues that you may think that we want. And I think this is going to be a time of evolution. It's not going to happen overnight.
And on that note, I'm afraid we have to take a break. There was a very interesting point that you brought up which I'd like to dig into, but that's going to happen after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are speaking with the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum, Dame Meg Taylor, about Fiji, the region, and the way forward. Before the break, Dame Meg, you mentioned something about how there needs to be a paradigm shift in how we look at development in the Pacific. One of the gripes that Fiji has openly had is that some of the donor agencies, some of the aid partners of the forum are supposedly trying to dictate the path of the Pacific and of small island states. Is that something that you believe needs to change? Is that actually happening?
Well, since I've been there, nobody's told me what to do, if that's what you are alluding to. I'm a very independent thinker. I just spent 15 years heading an independent office reporting to the President of the World Bank that took a lot of flack on issues. So I think people who know me know exactly how I work. On the development side, there are many partners in the region. You know, you've got the big donors and members of the forum itself is Australia and New Zealand, but then you've got European Union, who is now a big partner in the region. You've got ADB, Asian Development Bank, you've got the World Bank. The issue here is about having the conversation saying the priorities that the leaders have set are the priorities for the region. From your pool of resources, can we work together to make sure that these are implemented? That's the approach. At the moment, yes, EDF 11, we've signed this the other day, and the European Union had its own consultations, and I've had consultations with them, and hopefully we can now align some of their priorities with what the leaders will choose. I don't know what the leaders will come up with. We'll have to wait and see, and I've asked many of the donors to just tread water for a little while so that we can try and make the alignment better. Yeah.
And it's, you talked earlier about inclusivity in its approach towards that, the Pacific Islands Development Forum, and you can say whether you consider it a rival organization, in its approach towards that, at the outset included political leaders, members of civil society and all stakeholders within the same room talking together. Is that the model you want to emulate, or do you feel a pressure to emulate that kind of thinking when you talk about inclusivity? What's your approach?
Well, first of all, I don't see PIDF as a rival. If anything, I made overtures and went over to visit them, had a very good morning of conversation, had discussions with their leadership about what they're trying to do, and said to them if there are areas where there is commonalities and where we can find ways to work together, I'm open to all the organisations of the Pacific. The fundamental issue is what are we trying to deliver for our people in the region. I think we've got so many, we do have lots of organisations, and it's not always easy because we've got vast areas that we have to cover and very different needs in different countries. The issue of inclusivity was a very fundamental tenet of the Marauta report about inclusivity. My job is to make that happen. So one thing that we have consulted with leaders is that at the forum meeting in September, as part of the whole process of the week, that the troika of the forum, which will be Republic of Marshall Islands, Palau as the current chair and Papua New Guinea as the future chair, will have a dialogue with civil society, and that is on the agenda for the first day after the Small Island States meeting. Then there will be this discussion. It will be a discussion that needs to be worked out with civil society and with the leaders so that we really maximise the benefit of that.
If I may, Dave Meg, it would seem to me that the development of the PIDF and more so Fiji's drive to set up the PIDF after so many years of strained relations with the forum, with other member states of the forum, the PIDF has the potential to weaken the resolve of PIF member states, of the forum member states.
I don't see to be really honest, I don't see the logic in it. I think that if you have an organisation that meets certain interests and you're a member state, you might say, well, I'm interested in this organisation because of this and this issue. The Pacific Island Forum Secretariat right now is going through its own, it's not a restructuring, it's a refocusing. We commissioned an external review, and now over the last couple of months, staff have worked very closely about how they want to reposition themselves, what the real focus should be, and how we deliver it. I'm very pleased with the discussions I have with our staff, and my key aspiration for the Pacific Island Forum, the Secretariat, is to have an institution that provides the advice to leaders in the region, but that is known for its excellence and that it's open, it's inclusive. It also leans on other institutions, or draws, I should say, from other institutions that we can collaborate with. Institutions in Fiji, institutions in other parts of the region. The University of South Pacific is a prime example. Our neighbour, but also got academic resources there that we should be working much more closely to if we're going to have real debate around the issues that the leaders want as regional issues. Regionalism, I think, coming from a bilateral background when I was in the diplomatic work service, is a hard concept to grapple with, and I think people do struggle with it. But I think in the Pacific, going right back to the early days of when many of our countries were becoming independent, regionalism played a big role in it, and I think we have a better grasp of it than a lot of other regions.
How far have we progressed in terms of mending relations with Fiji? You speak about how Fiji has returned to negotiations. It is engaging in discussions and debates, but on a ministerial level, the Prime Minister of Fiji has said openly and repeatedly that he's not willing to come back until Australia and New Zealand, their position in the forum is re-looked at.
Well, that's a decision that the leaders of the Pacific have to make, and I'm not going to comment on it because that's not my. I don't have the authority to comment on it. My work is to utilise the situation as it is, and that is now that we engage at a technical level and we engage at ministerial level. And in recent times when we've had the security meetings in the forum, Fiji has participated, and every country welcomed Fiji back because Fiji has a lot to contribute. When we had the observer mission to Bougainville for the elections, it was the supervisor of elections of Fiji that led that delegation. So there are aspects where there is inclusivity and inclusiveness of Fiji in this process, but it's up to Fiji to say how it wants to be involved and when it will come back as full membership. Now, if the Prime Minister has taken that position, then that is a discussion the Prime Minister of Fiji has with the leaders of the Pacific.
Dame Meg, I'm going to have to pause you there. We have to take another break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back very shortly. Welcome back to the show. If you've just joined us, our guest tonight is the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum, Dame Meg Taylor. My apologies. Joshua, you have a question.
There are pressing issues still on the table when it comes to trade, especially access to the European Union. What's the status at the moment? Because I understand that there is still a lot of tension at the moment from the Pacific Island states and the EU.
Particularly on the EPA and fisheries, the Forum Secretariat was working with our member states. During the visit here of the EU and the ACP, Prime Minister of Fiji also made a very strong statement about a comprehensive agreement between the Pacific and the European Union with regard to fisheries issues. The foreign ministers and trade ministers will be meeting, I understand, at the end of the month in Tuvalu, and we will have our people there to work with them to respond to the letter from the European Union, which is really a unilateral decision about suspending the negotiations. And I think that is what has irritated our own members, countries in the region, that if you're going to suspend something, then a face-to-face discussion on the issues that were still contentious should have been held, and at least we could have known exactly what the issues were that were of concern to the European Union. The European Union's argument is that the suspension will help us to get our fisheries in order and the conservation issues in order. We know that the European Union doesn't support the vessel day scheme that the PNA countries in the Western Pacific utilise for fishing days. PNA and the Secretariat would argue that this is a tool that is being used for the conservation of fish. So these issues are outstanding, but hopefully, since the EU and ACP were here, I had questioning from ACP members and EU members, and I hope that the European Union, and I believe the European Union did listen very carefully, and that once, as a region, we respond, that there will be an opening for negotiations.
The 3-year suspension, I mean, I acknowledge you said that the EU has listened, but it seems a bit unrealistic to ask for a 3-year suspension in negotiations. As it is, member states, the Pacific has been saying for so many years that we need to conclude negotiations.
Well, that's the issue. There were certain issues that the Pacific wouldn't give in on, and it was the unilateral decision by the EU to suspend. It wasn't agreed as two parties in a negotiation that we will suspend. But the fisheries issues is on the minds of all our governments. So you've got Papua New Guinea and Fiji that are both part of the interim EPA, and the rights of global sourcing, where you can get fish from anywhere and then have access to the European market, is very attractive. And the bigger countries, of course, with the loining facilities and canning facilities, need this engagement for jobs. The smaller island states need to be part of that agreement. Now, if we're going to have a comprehensive agreement that would satisfy the biggest countries and the smaller countries, then it's in the interest of all our region. I guess one of the issues that bothers me the most is that of all the fisheries in this region, and we keep talking about how valuable our oceans are, and they are valuable, the Western and Central Pacific fisheries, I think the value of the fish is around US dollars 3 to 4 billion. We, as Pacific countries, only retain 5% of that. 300 to 400 million is what we earn. Where's the rest of it going? This is an issue that you hear from leaders, but you hear it from civil society and people when you visit islands, is added value to our fisheries. What do we get from the one resource that we as a region share? And that's what is fundamental to the agreement with Europe, US. Other countries, we don't have agreements. We have licenses. Each country has licenses. But I think that the PNA has really made a big impact on the way we trade our fish. But we also have the Foreign Fisheries Agency, particularly on the policies and the surveillance. And there's great interest in the fishing resources. Issues around the impact also on coastal fisheries. Then you've got in the high seas what's happening to certain types of tuna there. I'm not a fisheries expert, but I've tried to learn as much as I can, because it's the one fundamental one resource that applies to all of us.
Does it seem to you that the EU is being a bit narrow-minded on how the Pacific deals with its fisheries issues, and narrow-minded in how they believe that the Pacific should be dealing with its fisheries issues?
Well, I'd say that's what our member states have their concerns about. And what we're trying to do is find a way forward. And I think that after this week, and I'm thankful that the Prime Minister of Fiji raised it, because I think coming from a Prime Minister and a leader of the host country, it sent messages. And then in my statement to the ACP, questions were asked around the same issue. So it's not as if it was an issue that was raised and then dismissed. This is very much on the minds of everybody.
So from an advisory point of view,
Yeah.
If you were sitting at the negotiating table, what would you tell the leaders in order to get a better return for our fisheries? What would you tell them?
There are issues that I think that is left to the negotiation table. I should have replied like that to the negotiation issues, and that are privy to that at this stage.
All right, fair enough. On that note, we'll take a break. Welcome back to the show. Our guest tonight is the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum, Dame Meg Taylor. Dame Meg, I'd like to pick up again on the forum and Fiji. Throughout our discussions tonight on every issue, even when we talk about fisheries and regional and international discussions, Fiji still pops up into the discussion. I mean, can the forum effectively move forward without Fiji's inclusion?
Well, it's like any family. if one strong member is not participating to its fullest, everybody feels it. So I'm patient, and I think Fiji is patient too, but I think that this is something that we will, I hope and I pray that Fiji's participation will be to the fullest, because I think it will enhance the region. And I don't say that just because I'm here in Fiji and because it is the right thing to say. Huh? You know, I'm at the helm of an organisation that needs to be productive and giving sound policy advice to the leaders, and that means all its member states and how we are positioned in an international level as a regional organisation. Just the broader issues that are emerging in the region now in terms of the geopolitics of the region. It's the 21st century, things have changed. People watch the news, they see the tensions in the northern part of the Pacific. They understand the issues in terms of asylum seekers, they understand the issues in terms of climate and oceans and complexities around fulfilling the needs of our people with limited resources in some of our island states. Well, it takes everybody to make that work, and I don't want to see fragmentation in this region. If anything, I want to see a much, much stronger region.
On the issue of fragmentation, I mean, I had posed this discussion to you earlier in the week. We spoke at the Forum office. Realistically, if you look at it, you've got Fiji, and then you've got the rest of the member states. Isn't that quite a fissure in the membership of the Forum?
Sorry, could you
a rift in the membership of the Forum?
Well, I understand that, you know, you've got to remember, I've been here for 6 months now. Prior to that, when there was the suspension, there was a rift and tensions. I don't know if there was a rift in the conversations that many of our member states had with Fiji. But now that Fiji's had elections and it's back to a democratic government, there is a willingness, particularly in terms of the member states that I've had discussions with, is they're waiting for Fiji's full participation. But that is a decision for the Fiji government, and we as the Secretariat respect that.
Are you, or is your office in a difficult situation right now, trying to balance between Fiji on the one hand and then Australia and New Zealand on the other hand?
I don't, you know, there are the political discussions that go on when you hear what the Prime Minister of Fiji says and what other leaders in the Pacific say. As the Secretariat, we have to really stay the course of what our work is, and not, yes, it's a political organisation, but in terms of trying to get parties together, I don't believe that I'm that decision will be made by leaders. I think that my role is to make sure that we are very focused on what we do, keep the doors open always and the channels for Fiji. And if Fiji wants to have discussions or invite me to have discussions with them, that we do that. In my discussions with other countries, as I said earlier, there is not this discussion about, well, you know, Fiji doesn't want to be in, da, da, da. It's really about when Fiji comes back, then we want them back, we want them at the table. So, and I say that in all honesty. I have travelled to all our member states but for 3, and the question of Fiji always comes up in my discussion with leaders. And it's about but it is about the anticipation of Fiji being a full member.
Well, you talked about commonalities earlier. Obviously, one is trade, another is climate change. What's the approach at the moment? Are you towards the Paris summit? Is there a position? What's the foreign position at the moment?
Well, the work that's being done is really with, you know, SPREP is doing a lot of the work to get ready for what's happening in Paris. also the South Pacific community. What we've done for we participate in discussions, but also when the leaders meet in September, we have put aside a time, particularly for the leaders to spend, to be prepared for COP21. Now, there will be issues and differences of approach between many of our member states and one of our member states, particularly Australia, on climate. When I've had my discussions with leaders and we talk about this, my view is if there are differences of opinion, then there are differences of opinion, because the Pacific countries are very adamant about loss and damages and what is happening in the region. One of the issues that, as the Secretariat, that we're very concerned about is about access to finance on climate issues. You've got the Global Environment Facility, you've got the Adaptation Facility, you've got RED Plus that through the World Bank and other institutions. You've got now the Green Climate Fund. But accessing funds for our region has not been easy, and if you look at the percentages, I understand it's very, very small. So what I've asked my colleagues to do is give me a list of all the funds, and then what countries have accessed it, and what are the issues that make it so difficult for people to, for member states to be able to access it. One of the issues I would suggest is that it's the capacity in our own countries to be able to access these funds, and the requirements of these funds, and then what you can spend it on. But one of the main arguments that come from the smaller island states, which I think that we have to take into consideration, is loss and damages. That small island states like Tuvalu and Kiribati, I mean, they're the ones I've visited, and you know, they're now neighbours in the north, is that the implications of climate, you see them, and what are we going to be able to do to provide some support to them? Now, I think that I understand that there's been, well, we all know that there's been these preliminary negotiations that have been going on in Bonn at the moment, and then the preparation for the countries before we go to COP21. We will help to contribute towards that at the Forum Leaders meeting to make sure that issues are understood, but also that positions, we can help in clarifying their positions. But the leader in this whole, the crop agency that will take the lead is the Regional Environment Organisation.
And on that note, it's time for another break. We'll be back in a while. And welcome back to For the Record. We're just about to wrap up the show for this evening. Our guest is the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum, Dame Meg Taylor. Dame Meg, just as we come to the close of the show tonight, we've had a wide range of discussions about the Pacific, about regionalism, the way forward, relations, and climate change, it seems, is one of the big issues. But apart from climate change, during your tenure, what are some of the issues that you would like to see the forum address effectively over the next few years?
Well, one of the things I would really like is greater mobility within the region, that we can, as a region, that we be able to access each other's countries. Not just under the labour mobility schemes, but as visitors to each other's nations, that we are visa-free. And I think that restriction of being mobile within the region does affect the way people think about, well, if I'm part of this regional family, why is it so hard for me to get to places? That's one. That
would include Australia and New Zealand.
Absolutely.
There's so much gripe. I mean, I can talk about the Fijians at least, who have so many issues with having to apply for visas to Australia and New Zealand, and then they pay hundreds of dollars, but at the end of the day it might get rejected. Whereas on the flip side, Australians and New Zealanders can fly into Fiji anytime they like.
Well, that's about reciprocity in terms of your national your bilateral issues. But I would like to see that more on a regional. I'd also like to see the framework for Pacific regionalism truly implemented, functioning, and a greater inclusivity of our peoples in the Pacific. We know that on climate issues, and we anticipate that we will have more disasters in this region. I would really want to see a regional approach, and there will be a foreign ministers discussion in Australia in July that will be discussing disaster relief. But it's really about the regional cooperation, that our peoples, that we are trained for preparedness, but we can also be helping each other, and our member states that have military aircraft and support behind us to move people in and out. Of course, I want Fiji to be back in as a full member and a very active member, helping us lead the charge on many of the issues. I want to see a fair share, or a majority of the share on the resources of this region, particularly around our fisheries that right across the region. We have solid agreements that benefit the Pacific Island states.
We've only just managed to touch on a fraction of the work that the forum does and the forum will be doing and your office will be handling, but unfortunately we've come to the end of our show tonight.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to thank you very much for showing up, and best of luck to the forum in the future. Joshua, thank you for joining us as well. That was our show for this evening.
But starting tonight, we're introducing something new for all Fijians. Again, a first by FBC TV. We present Fiji's and the region's first TV editorial segment. My Say is an opinion piece hosted by veteran Fiji Sun journalist Nemani Ndelambatiki, using his experience honed after many years as a top newsperson who revels in keenly observing matters affecting Fiji and all Fijians. Nemani will use his depth of insight and razor-sharp analytical skills to dissect and scrutinize issues and matters of national interest. That's coming up next, but from me, until next weekend, good night.
Bola, I am Nemani Ndelambatiki of the Fiji Sun. Starting today, every Sunday straight after FBC News, and for the record, I will share my views on topics that affect all Fijians as we move forward together as a nation. There are some important questions that need to be confronted, and I will have my say on these issues. Tonight, my say is about parliamentary boycotts. The opposition walkouts from Parliament and boycotts must stop if it is to be taken seriously. All members of Parliament have a moral obligation to uphold the highest institution of the land. They fail to do it when they walk out because they do not like something and turn Parliament into a circus. They disrespect the Speaker and make a mockery of parliamentary rules and protocol. Bronwyn Bishop, the Speaker of the Australian House of Representatives, calls MPs who boycott Parliament or walk out a bunch of losers. She is right. MPs are in Parliament because voters put them there to be their voice, to scrutinize government policies and ensure that people are well served. So there is accountability and transparency in the national interest. The opposition MPs' behavior is a shame and a betrayal of the trust placed upon them by their voters. They fulfill their obligations and responsibility better when they are in Parliament, not outside. They fight every inch of the way and make government sweat and work hard before it pushes through new bills. In November last year, they did the opposite. They flew the white flag and surrendered, allowing the government to easily pass this year's national budget appropriation bill. They did it again last month, smarting over the suspension of colleague Ratu Nenga Malalamalavu for 2 years. They walked out of Parliament and boycotted one sitting. It was in that sitting that government passed the new Companies Bill and voted for the first reading of the Employment Relations Promulgation Bill 2015. The new Companies Bill is an important piece of legislation. The old legislation had a lot of archaic provisions that were no longer relevant to the 21st century. The new legislation has 752 sections that will help bring Fiji into the 21st century. There was a lot of interest in the new bill when it was at the committee stage, judging by the number of submissions. In the final lap, the opposition MPs let down the country by pulling out of the contest. They would have given it their best shot. On the ERP bill, they would have closely scrutinized it, even though they have a second chance to do it. Last year, Sodelpa MPs boycotted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's parliamentary address in Suba for some obscure reasons. There are times in the lives of MPs that they rise above petty politics and narrow sectional interests and come together in unity. This was one time when differences should have been set aside in the national interest. If they think they are wasting their time in Parliament because all their ideas have been rejected by a majority government side, they better think again. This is democracy, and they have sworn on oath that they will uphold the dignity and integrity of Parliament. They know that they don't have the numbers, so they will always lose the vote. It does not help their cause when they stay out. Next month, Parliament will sit again. Voters expect their MPs to front up and attend all the remaining sittings. They deserve nothing less. I am Nemani Ndelembatiki, and that was my say. For more of my views, you can read the Fiji Sun. See you next week.